Hey, I'm Kenny Rogers. I'm a vertical market specialist for cement aggregate mining here at SafeRack.
And I'm Ray Evans. I'm the vertical market specialist for bulk chemical. We also include agrochem, petrochem, and specialty chemical.
We're going to talk a little bit today about truck spotting and why it's important to customers. A lot of times, in the cement and aggregate world, we see a lot of trucks coming through. It could be as little as 25 trucks a day, but it could be up to 300, 350, depending upon the type of industry. Frac sand can see up to 500-600 trucks a day when it's real busy. And that creates obviously some safety issues when you're out there. The more throughput that you see, the more chances for people to fall. And, that really puts a big strain on putting in a very good, safe system for cement and aggregate.
Exactly. In the bulk chemical world, we don't see as much traffic as you guys do, but we want to have a safe environment for the operators when they're working on top of a truck or a rail car. So yes, spotting is important as well.
So whether it's 1 or 2 a day, like you'll see in the chemical world, or 600 a day, we want to talk a little bit about why putting the trucks in the proper spot makes a big difference. With Ray, he has to deal with loading arms. I don't really deal with that a lot. Tell me a little bit about why loading arms are important with spotting in the chemical world.
Well, a loading arm can only be so long, so we need to make sure that the truck or the rail car is spotted correctly. You could have an open hatch loading. You could have a closed hatch. We're dealing with some environments, some really nasty chemicals as well. So you've got an operator suited up. He needs to have a safe work environment, so spotting is very important on top of that truck.
So you just have trucks in your industry. Typically pneumatic hopper trucks or sandboxes are what you'll see with cement and mining. What about the chemical world? What do you see?
No, and a lot of the aggressive chemicals, we're dealing with ISOs, right? ISOs are those little framed units that are 20 by 8 foot tall, and they have a limited walk surface on top of there. So we need to make sure that when that pulls in, that our solution, the operator is going to be able to safely make his connection on top there, either with a hose or with a loading arm.
So you'll see ISOtainers, which are used to travel overseas. You'll see chemical, just regular chemical liquid trucks.
Correct. You'll see small acid trailers. They're kind of challenging because they're usually loaded from the rear, and they're smaller diameter trailers, so that can kind of create a challenge. So spotting's important there. If you're loading plastic pellets, they're going to be the 3-chambered trucks. So we need to make sure that we can access all that either through a tracking gangway or a wide gangway with a safety cage. But all spotting is very, very critical for that as well.
You have a lot of stuff that we really don't deal with. Basically it's just hatch access, and typically it's from the top. We'll do some bottom unloading from rail cars occasionally. But, that it's not very hard to set up a gangway that goes to the top of a rail car, typically. What are some of the challenges? Do some of those trucks have crash boxes or cages on tops of them to where it interferes with the gangways to go up there whenever you're spotting those trucks?
It really depends on the segment. Okay, so on top of an ISO, no, it's just going to be a flat walk surface up there. With the acid trailers, there's like a little platform on the side of the trailer, and that could be kind of challenging. Not only spotting, we need to make sure that our platform is up high enough so that I can traverse over and get a gangway and have the safety cage so it's not too big so that you could fall off the outboard side. So we see that occasionally. So in my world, we see a lot of different configurations.
Yeah, so when we have our representatives go out and take a look at some of these applications, you have to take a holistic view of what's going on out there, right?
Absolutely.
The different types of rail cars, trucks, the dams on top of them. Also, a little bit about the space going into and out of these loading spots. Isn't that an issue with what you do?
Absolutely. I'd probably say 65 to 70% of what the reps are bringing to me. These are existing facilities, and they didn't have any type of fall protection. And it's like, how do we get a solution in there in a confined space or a space constraint?
Yeah, I see it a lot with our terminals and our plants that are out there. They were built years ago, and a lot of them are in urban environments now. They used to not be, but the cities have grown up around them.
Sure.
Some of them are 70, 80 years old.
Sure.
So when we go out there, we really have to have an experienced view on how to lay our equipment out because they don't have a lot of space. These trucks are coming in and out of turns, going into the silos, and that makes a big difference whenever you're laying out our equipment because it could be, if they're coming into a turn, the radius is different than coming out of a turn. So you could have shorter, longer equipment. You may need bigger cages for certain applications.
I was going to say, how do you address that? Can you offset a cage if you're coming around a corner, or what's the best solution?
Well, I mean, that's a great segue into why some of the equipment is different in cement and aggregate. We have these specialized cages that have to fit on tops of these hatches that whenever they're opening left, right, front, back, which you don't see a lot of, we have to have specialized cages that work for those particular hatches. And we've worked with the major manufacturers over the years to come up with solutions that they like. It's been customer driven, kind of voice of customer, and it's worked out pretty good. We've been the go-to company when it comes to safe access equipment for the rail and truck in cement and aggregate.
Gotcha.
How about over there in the chemical world?
Similar. Talking about space constraints, a lot of times there might have been an access gangway or some sort of plank that goes down to meet the truck, but back in the day there was no mention of fall protection. It wasn't even on anybody's radar. So the challenge is if you're up underneath the existing canopy, you need to spot the truck correctly so that when the cage comes down, because now we're adding a cage, and then so you have a existing loading arm to make sure that all works in harmony. And it can be a challenge at times.
Yeah, I've seen a few locations. You have these racks that are just clustered with a bunch of different equipment. You have lines for product that go up there. Don't see that in cement and aggregate. There's a whole other host of challenges that you see whenever you're making sure that you spot their vehicles properly and navigating some of those issues that you have on the racks themselves.
Spotting is so important because now with OSHA and MSHA, we need to make sure that we adhere and actually our solutions actually meet and exceed all the OSHA regs. So OSHA minimum, you have to have a gap less than 19 inches. Me personally, when I'm working with our reps, I like to help design a solution so when that cage sits down on top of that truck, we've got about 12 inches or less. That's what I like to see.
Yeah, I mean, Ray's talking a little bit about how the loading rack industry has evolved. Rolling stock really doesn't have any guidelines, hard guidelines to follow. And what we have done as a company is adopted the platform regulations over to the rolling stock, which that 19-inch gap obviously applies to the platforms and handrails that people walk on daily within these facilities. And we've taken it to the next level. I know that, MSHA is the guiding, force in cement and aggregate, not OSHA, for the most part. There would be some terminals that do follow into OSHA, but if there's a mine involved, then MSHA comes into play. But, that 19-inch gap has slowly come down. This new cement cage can put that gap down to as little as 5 or 6 inches, which makes the customers feel more comfortable, and more importantly, the operators that are on tops of those vehicles.
Absolutely. We even have some customers out there that want to have less than 12 inches. So that creates more of a challenge. But with our once we get accurate measurements out in the field, we know platform height, we know the vehicle heights, we can work with our engineering design team, and we can come up with a solution to meet their requirements.
Are you seeing that some of your customers out there have more stringent regulations than OSHA within that gap on top of those vehicles?
Absolutely. As I was alluding to, I've seen it as low as 9 inches. They want to have less than 9-inch gap.
So that is a policy in some of these facilities?
Yes. It's not written in stone for everybody, but these are specific company standards that they have, correct. And we actually have different solutions for that.
So they're trying to become more safe. I mean, they obviously have put a big emphasis on going above and beyond what is required through the OSHA regulations.
Exactly. And we can help those customers meet those criteria.
Gotcha. So as far as the spotting goes with the trucks themselves, I know that in cement, what we'll see is there's some physical barriers where they can put in line speed bumps, things that not only can you see but the trucks can feel by going over. If those barriers aren't in place, and these trucks tend to drift away or too close to the platforms, which could do a couple of things. One, the equipment's not going to work properly. That's the biggest thing, right? But if they misspot and the equipment hits the tops of the vehicle, sometimes it could damage our equipment, which is bad in itself, right? Because it creates additional unsafe environments. And with that big cage, it's really easy for it to hit the vehicle before it goes down properly, unless the trucks come in at the exact spot.
So then you're suggesting like alignment guides, or maybe the operator or the plant manager paints some lines on the driveway for the trucks to align themselves up properly?
At a minimum, lines, Ray.
Okay.
Better if you have barriers.
Barriers or bollards or something like
physical
that?
Barriers. Trucks can move a lot of these out of the way and damage them. So customers who use some alignment tools that can take some abuse is probably better than, say, putting in jersey barriers or something like that, where they can damage the equipment, damage the trucks, I should say, that are coming in. And I've seen that those are better solutions than these big curbs that are put out there. Sometimes drivers do have a mind of their own.
Sure.
They do take out the equipment, and kind of less is more has worked out better in my opinion.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, if you spot too close to the platform, the gangway may not come down properly. You're going to have a huge gap on the outboard side. And inversely, if they spot too far out, your gangway goes down and there's a gap. They're going to have to jump over to get to the top of the truck. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So that's what we want to try to prevent.
Yeah. There's a misnomer out there that you can just buy a gangway in a cage and it just operates properly. You really have to educate the drivers. You have to put in these protocols or these barriers that allow the trucks to properly be spotted for our equipment to work properly. So I guess that kind of concludes what we're talking about today. If there's one takeaway that we would like to get across, is the fact that our equipment, although it's made to provide the greatest coverage and safety and fall protection that's out there, it doesn't work properly unless you go out there and you put in measurements to put the trucks where they're supposed to be. Anything closing for you, Ray?
No, this was a good topic. Thank you, Tanny, for your time this morning.
Yeah, you as well.
And catch us on our next podcast.